Hello and welcome to Hillstrong OT Cyber Chats, the podcast where we spotlight the people and ideas driving progress in operational technology cybersecurity. Each episode, our host, Hillstrong's own CEO, Roger Hill, sits down with fellow industry experts to share real-world insights, practical strategies, and the lessons they've learned through years of experience. If you're looking for grounded conversations that go beyond the buzzwords and into what actually works, well, you're in the right place. Hope you enjoy.
Welcome. Glad that you could join us here for our podcast on OT cybersecurity. So I've been looking forward to this one. I've got my friend Jose Seara here, and Jose and I have been talking about doing this podcast for a while now, but schedules are just very, very interesting. So Jose, first of all, welcome. Really glad you could join us today.
Thank you, Roger. Really happy, and thank you for having me here.
Yeah. So, Jose, would you care to introduce yourself to maybe some of the audience that may not know you or DeNexus?
Absolutely. So my name is Jose Seara. That is my new American name. Actually, my real name is much longer than that, but probably too long for American standards. So, I'm from Spain, and life took me to the US in 2006. I promised my wife that it was going to be a 2-year project, and here I am, 19 years later, and working towards the 20th anniversary in this beautiful country.
That's awesome. You know, Jose, I have met so many in this OT cybersecurity from Spain. There's quite a community in Madrid and other areas in Spain. So it's really interesting. So, on that note, one of the things that I really am probably it's my personal interest is the personal journey that everyone takes that influences their perspectives and how they see life, especially when you start hitting a certain age and you start getting that wisdom, right? I would love to hear your journey.
Okay, so certainly I'm getting to a certain age, so my story begins to be rich in that regard. I was born in Barcelona, but I grew up in Madrid. Probably you know that there is a nice rivalry between the two cities, so I have a little bit of both. And went to college in Madrid, and after I graduated, I began to work in industrial businesses. I'm an engineer as education, although I've worked only the first year after college as a real engineer, and soon I realized that I was much more compelled by the business side of the equation than the technical side.
Mm-hmm.
I began to work in some energy companies. My professional background is mostly in energy, and I did different things from being an intern to being a CEO of energy companies, and on the business technology front, evolving with the evolution of the energy technology. So I began being involved in heavy fuel related projects and ended up in the renewable or clean energy space.
So heavy fuel to renewable, that's an interesting pivot.
That is correct. Again, that is the way the energy has evolved, at
Yeah.
least in the first world, and that is how business took me to new endeavors. And one of those projects, a clean energy project, brought me to the US in 2006. At the time, I had an engineering company in Spain, partnering with a former boss of mine
Mm-hmm.
that was my manager, and then my mentor, and then my partner, business partner, and now we have a really strong personal relationship. I was made an offer to lead a new project in the US, and at the time, my friend, my partner, was thinking on retiring. He's older than me, and it was a nice opportunity for us to split up. And he retired, and now he sits on the beach, and I embraced a new future in the US. I was lucky to land in beautiful California. I spent 16, 17 years in San Francisco or outside San Francisco. And 2.5, almost 3 years ago, I decided to move to Boston for a number of reasons, and Boston is home for me now.
Yeah, that's quite the switch from California over to Boston. Yeah.
Indeed, I have friends in both sides, and they don't get along.
Likewise.
So I'm the bridge now.
Yeah, I can definitely understand that. So, what about the starting up DeNexus? What was the driver, the personal driver and motivation for you?
Yeah. So why starting a new thing is because I like building things from scratch, and at some point you monetize that effort, and then you move into the next new thing from scratch. It's a joy for me building new
I can
things,
understand that.
see new challenges, and keep learning and growing. So that explains why something new from scratch. And why cybersecurity? Because in the previous company, in the previous project before DeNexus, I was exposed to cyber risk. I was exposed, it was a clean energy company, wind and solar, renewable power generation facilities. And in my particular case, we had a unique operating model, quite complex, that gave us an exposure to a few things above the average player in the renewable energy industry. And one of them was cyber. For a number of reasons,
Yeah.
we were overly exposed to cyber risk in our operational technology infrastructure. And then all of a sudden, cyber went from me, cybersecurity, cyber risk went from taking care of laptops and printers to, oh my God, my facilities can be compromised and the whole business can be shut down. This was more than, I would say, almost 15 years ago. And at the time, OT cybersecurity was not even a theme for most of us in the industry. And we did the best with tools, solutions available to us to understand, manage, mitigate, and eventually transfer risk. And again, in the process, I learned something about OT cybersecurity. I think I lost you for a few seconds.
Oh, no, I'm here.
So I said that I learned something about OT cybersecurity, and at the top of the list of things that I learned was that it was a problem that didn't have a solution. And I thought that was, instead of a problem, could be a business opportunity. And when we sold that company, I took some time off and spoke with others in the industry to validate my thesis. And after some time, a few months, I decided to launch DeNexus to try to solve cyber risk management needs for industrial companies exposed to operational technology networks. And that is DeNexus, which was born in March 2019.
So, from your original vision and what you set out to accomplish with the DeNexus, that original blueprint, if you will, how far are you from that original blueprint to where you are today? And then maybe part of that, maybe just take a couple of minutes, just kind of give that 30,000-foot view of your solutions.
Yeah, let me explain the vision, the solution, and where we are in the journey. So the vision is building a standard for cyber risk quantification for the different stakeholders that need that information, from CISOs, CFOs, risk managers, risk committees, boards of directors, investors, and for the risk transfer industry. I make an emphasis on the risk transfer industry because, in my opinion, they play a critical role on managing this risk. Why? Because it is a low frequency, high severity type of risk.
Yeah.
The one that usually, if you own it, you want to offload from your balance sheet. And one of the efficient ways to do it is procuring protection through an insurance policy. So that is the vision. The solution that we have built is a data analytics platform that you can call a cyber risk quantification platform, although it is much more than quantifying. It is a platform that through quantification enables an efficient management of the risk, including simulation of risk mitigation projects and simulation of risk transfer solutions. In essence, we tell our customers, this is the probability that you have to face an event of these many millions of dollars in the next year, 20 years, 100 years, 200 years. And we tell them not only this is the dollar amount that you are exposed to, but these are the main drivers of risk, and these are the main drivers of loss. And that is the platform, which in essence is a gigantic data analytics platform that takes data from the outside, threats and threat actors, and from the inside, OT network, how the network is built, devices, vulnerabilities, cybersecurity controls, and with that creates in essence a digital twin that we use to run simulations and see how an attack and an attacker can or cannot make progress through the infrastructure. That is in essence the platform. And where we are in the journey, it turns out that modeling cyber risk was much more complicated than anticipated.
I can imagine.
So the vision, I think that the vision was spot on. The market is developing, and there is much more awareness of this risk now than 5, 10, 15 years ago. And there is more awareness of the need to understand and manage this risk. Again, modeling this risk is very complex because it's a complex, dynamic risk. Different than other risks, it contains a human component, which is even more difficult to model because it's not Mother Nature deciding that there is a hurricane or an earthquake. There are actors that have motivations to do things, and trying to understand and model those motivations and the new tools available to them every day to do new things every day is not only difficult, it's a moving target because the risk is dynamic and it's evolving.
And what are the primary sectors that you guys are really focusing in today? Is it power with your background or other sectors as well?
Excellent question, Roger. We target industrial sectors exposed to this risk, but we need to customize the solution to each sector because we want to provide our customers with high quality data, and different sectors are exposed to the same risk, but in a different way because it depends on the way they make money. So you are right. We began with power because that was my personal background. Sure. And I was able to help the team on the early days to build the solution for power. And over time, we have evolved, and now we cover pretty much any flavor of power generation, excluding nuclear, and transmission and distribution of electricity, which is a very complex asset to model. Large data centers, these gigantic data centers that are popping up everywhere. They are really big industrial facilities, hundreds of megawatts, if not thousands.
I was just going to say that the convergence of power and data centers, it just
correct.
These are crazy times.
Crazy times, and with power, exposure to OT network comes, and with cooling systems the same, and they are fully automated. So again, they are exposed to this risk. Manufacturing, many different manufacturing sectors, and we've done also some transportation, specifically airports. And we will keep evolving into new sectors. And next one probably will be oil and gas.
It's interesting. Maybe if we double click into manufacturing for just a moment, my read in the market, how it's somewhat evolved, is I think the manufacturing sector, generally speaking, was a laggard in terms of OT cybersecurity, strictly because of motivation. I think when we look at the post-Stuxnet era, if you will, the manufacturing sector, like I said, generally speaking, they weren't convinced that Russia or China were out to get them. At the time, they were right. I think the focus early on was more critical infrastructure and things of that nature. I do think ransomware has changed that, especially with the targeting of manufacturing, and now the ransomware as a service and things of this nature. The point being is, in that journey to now address this risk head on, I do see a lot of investments that are being made that aren't being made necessarily systematically. And let me quantify that from a risk perspective, right? So there's not even the defined systematic requirements of evaluating different vendors of different technical controls. There's a real focus on detection, which, detection's good, but security is really about people, process, and technology. It's great to have detection, but if you don't have a plan and people trained to respond, you have another challenge. So with that, I think one of the things that I'm seeing is pressure from the board and senior leadership to show, hey, where's the return? We've invested millions across our fleet globally on some of these security technical controls. Can we prove that we made the right investment? And that's really one of the challenges that I see today, is how can you help drive that business case? That's where I think what you guys are offering is it's so important, getting into the financial quantification, because risk, often we talk about a qualitative versus quantitative, but until you can do the financial quantification, it doesn't really resonate with some of the decision makers that have the budgets.
That is so truth, and that is a reflection of my personal journey with this.
Yeah.
I come from the days where, again, cyber risk in OT environments was not even a topic of conversation. There is something here that we should pay attention to. And then we began to qualify that, and red, yellow, green was much better than nothing. And maturity of controls was a reference point.
Yeah.
And some scores that first vendors in the space offered, again, were much better than nothing. But certainly they do not meet the needs of certain use cases. They do not meet the needs of board of directors that need to do capital allocation decisions. So you cannot allocate capital against a red or a yellow or a green. You need to allocate capital against a financial exposure, a dollar amount. You need to measure return on the investment. Those of us in cyber risk or in cybersecurity tend to think that this is the most important thing on earth, but actually that may not be the case. And we are competing in those rooms, in board meetings, in risk committees. We are competing for resources against other risks, situations, problems that these companies have.
Yeah.
And the only way they can allocate resources efficiently is by comparing those financial metrics. This is my investment, this is my return. I am better off after having invested this, or I am not, or how much should I invest here because I have other needs to cover. And again, quantification solves the problem. Is novel in this novel cyber risk, but quantifying risk is something that the world has been doing for the last, couple of 100 years. Yeah. So we are just copying and pasting this on a more complex risk to model.
You know, one of the challenges or headwinds for OT security generally is the cross-functional nature, right? If you think about who is the buyer today, and has that buyer changed from when you first started to who the buyer is today versus the user? Because one of the things that I think is very, very interesting is the fact that it really appears that the CISO are the ones having the budgets and responsibility for OT security. At least the pendulum is definitely shifting that way. But at the same token, you're looking at a situation where it's budgets to secure infrastructure that they don't own the assets. It's the assets that are owned by operations. And it's really interesting when you start thinking about this cross-division type of, the IT versus OT. All of these things, I think they really come to a head in terms of how are you communicating your effectiveness and getting to a point where it's mission oriented. Because I think that's one thing that's really folks lose sight of, Jose. It's the idea of I hear this all the time talking about certain ransomware attacks. Yeah, 75, 80% of ransomware attacks that shut down OT production never got to the production floor. So what? They didn't need to. The impact is the same. So I don't know. I look at it. I look at it from that perspective. I think it's understanding the mission-oriented aspect of what we're trying to do here.
Yeah, you are describing quite well a really complex ecosystem of stakeholders.
Very.
And the owners of the assets that are exposed to this risk are the operational teams. And cybersecurity and cyber risk is not the problem. It's not in their scope. Traditional cybersecurity teams don't know what's going on the floor of the factory. And they do not understand the challenges to deal with cyber security situations in an OT environment. They are used to patch things and they are used to stop things for patching, and that is not an option if you are manufacturing cars or whatever. Right. And the perfect persona, the perfect buyer still doesn't exist. That is our experience, which is an indication, is a proxy of how mature or immature the space is. I thought when we began 6 years ago that the perfect buyer was going to be a risk-oriented CISO.
Yeah.
To my dismay, that role is not evolving in that direction. CISOs are less risk-oriented and more technically oriented every day. I don't know if that is right or wrong, but that is a fact. And when you face a technical CISO, they don't have the right motivations in their job. I don't mean that they are good or bad, simply their scope, their job description does not reconcile with a risk management strategy. So it's one of the challenges. The market is evolving, and actually I've seen a big evolution in 2025, probably a combination of different reasons. And in 2025, conversations are easier than they were in the past. Even stakeholders that usually didn't speak risk language are beginning to use it because they are forced from the top. And I feel that everybody is looking for that answer. Okay, what is my risk? And one of my or DeNexus's contributions to the industry is evolving from a cybersecurity conversation to a risk conversation. Mm-hmm. And I think that we are making good progress on that regard. The industry is making a good progress.
So I would love to get your take on something, and this is just something I've personally, one of my personal theories, right? In our post-COVID era, one of the things that I think the world became very uber aware about was how fragile our global supply chain was,
Mhm.
and how that could be disrupted. And it was just it was literally the perfect storm, if you will. I My prediction coming out of that COVID was one of the most valuable positions of every large company coming out of that era would be the chief risk officer. But I don't know. I might not have been correct, but that was my read on the market. But I wonder if that evolution and people having to experience that has led to this point where these conversations, people have more of a risk mindset now. Because I do think that's really interesting thinking about, you mentioned a lot of the CISOs up until this point were very technical oriented.
Yeah, and that is still the case. But again, we see more and more interest on having the risk conversation. Still skepticism about the ability to quantify risk, which means that we need to work harder on building that trust. It's not about talking; it's about showing that yeah, the risk is complex. But we are in 2025, almost 2026, so there are
Yeah.
really amazing tools available to us to model complex situations, and there is more data every day, and this is a data game, and good data in, good data processing, good data out. It's as simple as that and as complicated as that. And and many others, not only DeNexus, are doing an excellent job educating the market, and I think that all of us together are moving the situation, the market in the right direction.
Yeah, I would agree. I would definitely agree. You brought up the word tools, so I have to go there. Now that we're at the tail end of 2025, we know AI is not going away. What are the impacts that you see AI having on OT security today, but also in the future? Because I know that you guys have done some things around AI, and
Yeah,
I'd love to hear about it.
for us is a twofold. On the very positive end,
Mhm.
we are investing a lot in proportion to the company we are on the AI, Gen AI, uh, to solve some aspects of the modeling that that we solved in a different way in the past, because either the tool didn't exist, or it was not affordable,
Mhm.
or it didn't scale, or a combination of all the above. And it is allowing doing things that were unthinkable with the resources we have just barely a year ago. And not to spoil, but soon we will be releasing new products that we've been training and building for the last several months. So that is good news. Also, good news is that many others have access to the same tools, and this is an industry effort. And yeah, competition is good, and competition is bad.
Absolutely.
So now a new company, a new team with modest resources can do in months what it has taken us to build several years. And, and there is another completely different aspect, which is evidently many others are using these tools for good. The bad guys are using the same tools for bad.
Yeah.
And that is a scary aspect that is keeping us awake at night, not only because of the nature of the problem, but how we can solve for that, how we can help our customers to understand that risk, because the risk arguably is escalating exponentially, because again, the bad guys have access to cost-efficient tools to do things that in the past require much more time and many more resources. How we can pick up on that in our next generation of the models is still work in progress, to be honest.
So I can definitely relate, since we've been so heads down and focused on a lot of our AI development for Resilient, and I've never seen anything like this, Jose. And listen, I went through the .com bubble, right? But this AI, I've never seen anything like it. Literally every week or two, looking at X, there's almost a technology recap of what the latest hype curve was, right? And well, just look at today. What was it? Now, I don't recall if it was this morning or last night, but I just saw that. So Google released Gemini 3, and then we've got Grok 4.1 out. So one of the things that's so interesting is when you're on the development side and leveraging different types of AI technology, for something that is changing so quickly is how you keep up to date. So how you architect some of your technical solutions that can leverage really an abstraction layer and that you can move quickly. It's almost easier for the younger companies that are just getting started on their tech stacks versus the monolithic software architecture where how can I realize AI in an iterative fashion? Good luck.
Absolutely.
It's crazy.
Absolutely.
It's absolutely crazy. And I definitely agree with you. One of the things that really concerns me, so, in that post-Stuxnet era, I was, just completely fascinated with the idea that someone would intentionally attack these systems. So, I started my journey on the offensive side. And so then I started learning how to exploit different industrial control systems. I worked for a large vendor at the time and demoed it on our systems and started teaching offensive security as a mechanism to defend. The point is knowing how to do. I was doing some things back in the day where I was automating a lot of these scripts so that literally a salesperson could actually run these scripted a day in the life demos that I was creating. The point being those primitive exploits that I was doing versus what can be automated at hyper scale today it's beyond what a human can actually respond to.
Yeah.
So, we have to invest our resources into keeping up. Otherwise, it's going to be so lopsided.
Constantly. That has been the main use of capital for us in 2025.
Oh, yeah, the investments are crazy.
And you are right. We're not a big company. We're a small company. But we are beginning to face those decisions, saying, "Oh, it's time to entirely rebuild something."
Yeah.
Because now it's painful. If we wait another year, it may be impossible because of legacy systems, because of legacy architectures. So
Yeah.
it's a complex situation. Everything changes every day.
Yeah.
And good news is that there is a lot of talent and young talent that understand those tools much better than us, and they are willing to spend their time building something for good instead of using that capability for something different. And AI is how can I say? combination of scary and at the same time super exciting.
Yeah.
And sometimes I regret that I'm getting not all, but certainly I'm at the at the end of my professional career, and I may not have the chance to experience things that are to come firsthand, or I will. Who knows?
Oh, I think at the speed of evolution right now, I think you're going to see quite a bit. One of the things that I would say, I think it's natural to think about some of the young engineers today and, wow, just being so absorbed in this technology. But there's an aspect of, well, I would say people that have our wisdom, our years of experience, right? One of the things that I think is so interesting about, especially the LLMs, right, is when you're talking about the hallucination, you can look at 95% of the output and it's just, wow, it's fantastic. But being able to tell that 5%, oh, wow, that's just horrid. We need to go fix that. Where if you don't have that experience, that's a little bit harder to actually detect some of those hallucinations. So in some ways, I think having the experience and being at our age is actually a benefit with using some of the LLMs today.
Yeah, the combination that you are describing is the killer combination. If you can combine the experience with the talent and with the freshness of young, hardworking talent, that is when things happen. And actually, you and I are crazy enough to having launched a new startup this late in our career or this early in our career, depending on how you look at it. And in my particular case, is what keeps you alive and learning every single day. And we can actually, I think that we contribute with that experience to the success of the venture, not only from the technical standpoint, but from many others. I mean, building a company is much more than building technology.
100%.
What is the easy part?
Yeah, exactly. One of the ways that I like to, the way we've architected some of our solutions with the use of agentic RAG within Resilient. So, for example, one of the things that we've done is that we've taken a lot of the standards, frameworks, and regulations, and then we applied this within our vector database to have our similarity search. So, one of the things that's really interesting there is, okay, when you measure against a certain goal, you actually already know how you would measure against any other standard or framework because of that similarity search. That's all great for standards, regulations, and frameworks, all that good stuff, right? There's the aspect of what about that 30 years of experience? That experience of designing control systems, developing SCADA systems, right? Taking that experience and feeding that also into the agentic RAG database so that what you can do is start to develop these models, for example, where you can start to, you ask that collection of experienced folks, name a time where you had to deviate away from a standard to achieve an optimal solution, right? So when you can start to combine the standards and regulatory environments within that agentic RAG with that experience quotient, now you can actually start to bottle up that experience. And I think that's such an interesting concept. Maybe it's because of my stage of life.
No, totally. I agree 100%, and I think that is one of the differentiators for us compared to other similar companies that don't have that experience and they come 100% from the technology front. And technology is marvelous and solves amazing problems, but it still doesn't replace the human brain. I don't know if that will happen in the future or not, but certainly that is not yet the case. So
No, it's the way we choose to look at it here is that it's a force multiplier. That if you use it in the right way, it can be a very effective tool to really help you achieve a scale that was just a year ago was just seemed like science fiction. Having said that, how you architect these solutions to maintaining that human in the loop for critical decisions is absolutely critical. Having those guardrails in place.
That is way above my pay grade.
God, I don't need to go so technical.
I trust my team to solve that problem for me.
There you go. Jose, what would be some closing thoughts around any trends or what you're seeing? What does your crystal ball tell you now that we're on the tail end, getting ready for FY26?
I think that for this particular problem, first is a real problem, and is a problem for the community, it's a problem for the society. These physical critical infrastructures are behind everything we do every day. We may not even notice or realize that they are there, but you and I are talking thanks to some physical critical infrastructure right now. So the problem is real, and the problem is not only here to stay, it's going to keep evolving. I don't want to say growing, but it's going to keep evolving. And some of us are in the business of trying to avoid that the problem grows by building and bringing solutions. And I think that we are contributing to the society by protecting in different ways these assets that we rely on for our daily lives, and not only to develop new things or to I don't know, but to things that are really important. So I mean, hospitals, communication infrastructures. These are things that we cannot live without, and they are exposed, and we tend to forget at some point because, as I mentioned at the very beginning, this is a low frequency risk. So you tend to forget that is there dormant until it happens. And in 2025, there has been a few big examples. And unfortunately, I think that in 2026, there will be more. At the same time, again, more awareness, more resources coming into this space, more capital, more companies building different solutions. And this is a community problem, and it requires a community solution. And I put my 2 cents, you put your 2 cents, many others are working in this space. And all of us together are making those infrastructure resilient, which is what we need at the end of the day.
Yeah, I completely agree, Jose. And I think in one way to look at it, you and I are in a very similar mission, if you will, and that's putting the right information in front of executives to be able to make effective business decisions. And in your case, it's looking at that financial quantification of risk to these OT systems. We are looking at it from that, force multiplier, that program execution, to have that view of initiatives on a global scale and things of that nature. I think, though, that one of the challenges is really getting that information, and it's thinking about things, the business of security, and what are the investments we should be making, and being able to look at it from a pragmatic perspective. I think it's so crucial, because when many of the clients that we work with today, you and I both, these are big logos, big names, and it's the bigger the name, the bigger the the scale of the problem. And I think you have to look at that pragmatic approach and be able to understand, okay, from that low frequency, high critical impact, you can look at that decision. But this is the information that's required by executive leaders to make those effective decisions. Because the other side of it, when they do hire a consultant to do that risk assessment, and that risk has been identified, well, now you have another challenge. You're aware of the risk. And now you have to actually do something about that risk to at least have a defensible position. Because I think that's where things have changed in terms of the CISO and being held accountable.
And not only, you mentioned helping these decision makers to make the right investments, totally agree, but also helping them to avoid making the wrong investments. Because
Yes.
in these OT systems, sometimes legacy systems,
Yeah.
I mean, you can throw zillions of dollars if you want, but that may not be necessary because, hey, the systems without context are, I would say, even weak or not resilient because of the way different components are built. But the systems as a whole, they are really resilient because there are really good people behind engineering them, deploying them, putting the right controls in place. And again, if you let a traditional IT cybersecurity person put their hands in an OT system, they don't know what to do with, again, thousands of vulnerabilities, and they don't understand that vulnerability does not equal risk. So, hey, this is what you should do. This is what you shouldn't do. And beyond this point, there is no return on the investment of throwing additional dollars to mitigate the risk. You still own the tail risk. You need to understand it, and then you need to be prepared for that bad day. And you can be prepared for the bad day if you know when the bad day could come and how big the bad day could be.
Have a plan and practice the plan.
And practice the plan. That is important.
Absolutely.
Practice and practice and practice.
Jose, this has been a real pleasure. I'm really glad that we were finally able to get you on the podcast. This is a conversation thread where I can keep going, especially if I have coffee. Really enjoyed the conversation. Any closing thoughts that you would like to, that this conversation is brought to focus for you?
Thank you for having me here today. Congratulations on the project. Congratulations on the podcast, and continuing this conversation offline.
Well, that sounds great. Thank you so much, Jose, and thank you to the audience. And I hope that you all got some value out of this. I know I certainly did. Thank you so much.